Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to Port Perspectives, our ongoing series of programs where we interview CEOs and senior managers in the industry to talk about their lives and what's happening in their particular world. My name is Captain Jeff Monroe. I'm the Director of Education Programs and Senior Management Advisor for the International Association of Maritime and Port Executives. And today we welcome Barbara Melvin, who is really the president and CEO of the South Carolina ports and is leading the charge here in the Port of Charleston for a lot of great improvements that have been going on and everything. So Barbara, we welcome you. It's nice to have you with us. And, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So Jeff, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. Certainly since the pandemic, supply chain has been at the forefront of business talk, of news, and most refreshing for all of us, becoming very popular as a major in a lot of our universities. So it's a pleasure to be here and help advance this cause to get the best and brightest into our industry. You have it right. I'm the president and CEO of the South Carolina Ports Authority. I would say that I have probably had one of the more non-traditional paths into this role. If you look around our industry, I came out of the government relations side of our business, working my way then into leading our harbor deepening project here at the port, and then moving into operations, and then ultimately into this role a couple of years ago. And I would say during the 25 years that I have been here, I have seen a lot. I have seen multiple infrastructure projects come to fruition. I have had the opportunity to work with the most amazing people who make this port what I believe to be one of the greatest top 10 ports, the most productive, and the most preferred port in which to do business. So I give all of the credit to my team for that.
Well, that's always a wonderful place to be. I always found that many times when I would get together with my folks, both when I was at Massport and up in Portland, that the smartest people in the room oftentimes were not me, and that they had great energy and great direction, and that you often found you often found that you had your hand on the tiller while they were doing all the rowing. That's a famous line that I use. But we used to have
We just have to be smart enough to know that we're not the smartest in the room.
Yes, I think so. We used to have a sign that Peter Vigu at Chinbro put in our conference room when he was using the conference room. It says, "No one in this room is smarter than all of us together." And it was amazing what you could get accomplished when you begin to work as a team and stuff. So, and Barbara, what are some of the interesting things that are going on in the port right now? I know there's a lot of exciting infrastructure discussions, and like everything, you've got increasing traffic, you've got the harbor deepening. All of those are part of what's in the future planning.
So, it's very critical for us to stay focused on our strategic plan because it helps people understand what's at the forefront of our minds every day. And what we focus on mainly is reminding ourselves that operational excellence is a journey. It's not a destination. So we are constantly in pursuit of improving our operations here. We are investing in our infrastructure. That's critical to make sure we deliver that on time, on budget for our customers, whether that be the ocean carrier or the ultimate shipper. It's growing and anchoring our cargo base. A port is absolutely nothing without volume, and we must deliver, upon that type of ownership mentality that is generated at a port so that, we make sure the customer feels like they are that person that is preferred here and that they understand we are here to serve them and make their lives in supply chain easier. And then lastly, caring for not only the people that work at the South Carolina Ports Authority, but for the entire maritime community, the more than 10,000 people that work on and around our facilities on a daily basis to keep supply chains fluid. And, that includes our ILA partners, our stevedores, our harbor and tug pilots, our motor carriers, very importantly, because we have to keep the employee base in all of these organizations healthy, or the supply chain will start to fail. And so it's important that people think of not just the South Carolina Ports Authority when they think of South Carolina ports. I want them to think about all the partners that make us productive and preferred in the ocean carrier industry.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of innovative things that you've been doing, which I find fascinating as well. For example, you have developed your own chassis pool over there. You're doing weigh in motion for your trucks to limit your truck time. You have a pile of new cranes, that you're putting in play, particularly Wanda Welch and across the other way at the new terminal Leatherman. And you're in a growth mode where a lot of the ports are trying to figure out how to deal with what they're dealing with. And, yourself in New Orleans, for example, looking at you've already built the first phase of Leatherman, and now you're looking at, expanded phases and stuff like that. And one of the things I found most fascinating about was your outreach to the next generation. When you had your crane naming you had the grammar kids and stuff like that, name the cranes. And, I thought that was fascinating as well. So there's a lot of innovative ideas that are coming out of the port.
Well, if you'll indulge me, I'd love to talk about some of that because
Absolutely.
really if a port is not thinking about that next project, that next delivery that makes you be able to supply additional capacity into a market that is going to need it, then you're really kind of sitting back on your laurels and not doing your job. So I would say, here at South Carolina Ports, we're not only celebrating the victories of the infrastructure that we have delivered, we are looking at how to improve upon that infrastructure or add additional capacity because port capacity is our currency. It's how we sell ourselves to the ocean carriers, to the ultimate importer or exporter. So we have a lot of exciting projects going on today. We have accomplished some that are worth noting, like modernizing our Wando Welch terminal. When it was originally constructed here in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, it was servicing ships that were 2,000 and 3,000 TEUs. And we remember that because we've been in the industry for as long as we have been.
Mm.
But, today you're seeing 3, 14, 15, 16,000 TEU ships that line up beside each other. So you had to modernize the terminal to be able to accomplish that. And so that's a check mark in our book. We have the deepest harbor currently on the US East Coast at 52 feet. Another check mark in our book that was accomplished in record time with our partners at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We have started our own chassis pool. We have built 2 inland ports in both Greer and Dillon to serve our 2 Class 1 railroads, Norfolk Southern and CSX, and then our hinterland with additional transportation options beyond just our motor carriers. The chassis pool, as you mentioned, not only helped our motor carriers have a reliable piece of equipment, but during the pandemic, it injected assets into a supply chain that needed more chassis to maintain fluidity. We are constantly protecting port-dependent land here because Charleston's a beautiful place. And if land sits for too long, it's going to become a neighborhood. So we are protecting port-dependent land so that people who need our services can transload or have warehouses near our port facilities. And then, we have constantly got to keep our eye to the future. Where is that next increment of port capacity for us? And we are not only very excited about the opportunity to now modernize our North Charleston terminal because our South Carolina Department of Transportation is working with us to alleviate what is now a bridge height constraint so that we can soon serve those big ships at the North Charleston terminal as well, giving us 3 big ship ready terminals inside of Charleston Harbor, which would be the Leatherman terminal, the Wando terminal, and the North Charleston terminal. So exciting things for us. More than 10 million TEUs of capacity when we complete all of this infrastructure planning within our harbor that currently has the deepest channel on the US East Coast.
I was impressed with the amount of rail infrastructure and other infrastructure that's going in near the Leatherman terminal and stuff, and what was a portion of the old Navy Yard and everything, and how much land is now available and utilized for expanded opportunities. The industry saw peak movements of containers, as you well know, during the pandemic, and then of course everything dropped off. But yet we're starting to see an inching up again, of where we're getting back to pre-pandemic levels. And of course, they're having some significant issues with the Panama Canal, and of course what's going on over in the Red Sea with the Houthis and everything. And we saw the container rates jump quite a bit. redeployment all of a sudden, things going back to the Pacific and everything. But I noticed this morning that the container rates have been on a steady, slow decline worldwide, which is good. So are you anticipating that you're going to see the business remaining strong into the future?
What we're seeing right now today, Jeff, is a steady increase in our intermodal volume. We are seeing month over month records at our two inland ports, and it really validates another exciting infrastructure project that we'll deliver here in July of 2025, which is the Navy Base Intermodal Facility. We are actually consolidating our two rail ramps into one that will be operated by the South Carolina ports for both NS and CSX. That gives us more than 1 million rail lift capacity, and it's needed. Our inland port in Greer that our partner Norfolk Southern serves along with us has seen more than 1.2 million rail lifts in less than 10 years and is already undergoing an expansion that we will deliver this year for both additional rail tracks, storage tracks, and then container space. Our inland port in Dillon has really been the shining star of our 2023 calendar year results. Most people think of an inland port being successful when they have between 30,000 and 40,000 rail lifts in a year. Our Dillon Inland Port exceeded 42,000 rail lifts last year, and our Greer Inland Port exceeded 175,000 rail lifts last year. So we just are so grateful for the diversity of cargo that we are serving in both of those inland ports. And it, again, validates that story of us being an intermodal gateway that will only be enhanced when we deliver the new Navy Base Intermodal Facility, which is a $500 million project that will include barge use inside of our harbor to give an alternative to just moving containers by truck.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. It's kind of a very unique situation where you're actually going to be moving all your boxes from the Wanda Welch by water, right, over to Leatherman, and then putting it on the rail from there and everything. And that's very unique because the development of highways in South Carolina is always a slow, meticulous, and sometimes painful project, but overall, it's a great innovative approach to moving things, onto the rail, and taking advantage of the fact that, you have a very active and good terminal already in place, but they're on different sides of the harbor and everything like that. And how are you planning for the future in regard to resiliency? I know they don't call this the Low Country for nothing, and I know certainly you built Leatherman a little bit higher, and I know you're doing some improvements also at Wanda Welch.
So, I just wanted to go back for a second to your statement. I would have to stand up for our South Carolina Department of Transportation. They have an injection of additional dollars to build infrastructure in and around South Carolina, because it's really important to remember a port can be the best it can be, but if there is not sufficient supporting inland infrastructure, the bottleneck happens at the port then. So what we see here is a network of our inland infrastructure working alongside of a marine terminal infrastructure to keep us all fluid. We serve just-in-time manufacturing. We have important retail that comes through our port, and making sure we alleviate any points of congestion is at the forefront of not only the port's mind, but our elected leaders' mind and our South Carolina Department of Transportation's mind. So we're very fortunate to have them as a critical partner in our success here in South Carolina. So I just wanted to note that. And, really, you play to your strengths. So we have the deepest harbor because we're closest to the open ocean. So that typically means you would not have one big terminal because we don't have the ability to have a contiguous facility. So when you have multiple terminals, it's harder to build a train in one place. So you have to come up with creative ways to address that, what could be considered a disadvantage. And we were really the last major port on the US East Coast to not have on-dock or near-dock rail. So this barge and new Navy Base Intermodal Facility and then dedicated road between the Leatherman Terminal and the new facility is our creative solution to make that an invisible move for our customers, so that that is still a very rail-capable port, even though it's a multi-terminal footprint. But with regards to resiliency, we have to pay attention to this. Things are changing. Our weather patterns are changing. Our storms have become more severe. Our rain showers, drop more rain in shorter amounts of time. And so living on the coast, again, it's a beautiful place, but you have to plan for what can happen. And we do that as we are improving our terminals. Again, North Charleston Terminal will have the same opportunity very soon to be improved as Wando was. We knew to have Hugh Leatherman Terminal higher, and we are constantly looking for ways to address what will be coming in the future. And we have a great partner in the city of Charleston because they're going through this very same conversation about protecting the city. And so we are a partner in that conversation with them. So resiliency, climate change is definitely sea level rise, definitely things that we pay attention to. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and our environmental resource agencies within the state demand that we pay attention to that as we're building new public infrastructure.
I think your point is well taken. We never work in this world alone. And if you don't have good partnerships with the DOTs, with the Army Corps, with the Coast Guard and everybody else, it's often hard to accomplish what you need to, because as ports, we're the interface between the water, between the land, between the rail, and all of that. And what I have found in some cases is that some of the DOTs, even with DOTs that have ports right in the heart of, the state and stuff like that, often are more focused on things like roadways and don't really understand what ports do. But I think certainly from what I've seen that the South Carolina DOT certainly has a good understanding. And I think that's much to your credit. And I see that with all of this, you seem to be developing some very keen strategic objectives that you're actually following, that you're using as a management piece for you and your team to say, here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to get it done. And I think it gives the industry as well as the public a level of confidence in all of that.
Well, the critical piece of that success is, first of all, having a strategic plan that's manageable, only having 4 strategic goals. If you have more than 5, you really just got a task list rather than something that should be at the forefront of your mind every day and should be renewed and evaluated every year. Even if it's a 3-year plan, you should not be afraid to say, okay, is this working? Did we phrase it right? Are we focusing on it right? Are we making an impact? It has to be measurable. So these are the types of things that I would encourage everyone to have, because you don't want to be, just to have a little bit of maritime humor here, rudderless in what you're doing every day. And insofar as what you said about partnerships, it is absolutely critical. So keep preaching that, because the more people in our industry understand that selfishness must be thrown out of the window and that supply chains are interconnected so that it craves collaboration, we must keep preaching that.
Yep, absolutely. And I think you've taken the words right out of our book. We have a strategic planning session that we talk about. And basically, that's what we focus on SMART criteria, on KPIs, on using the strategic plan as a management tool and stuff. You have done very well. You and your port have done very well in all of this. What advice would you give to young people coming into the industry, who are maybe thinking about the port industry as a long-term career path, and maybe someday, sitting in the same seat that you're sitting in?
So first of all, never underestimate your ability to sit anywhere. Sit at the table. When you go in a room, don't sit around the room, sit at the table. You're there for a reason, and participate. I would also echo what I know has been said previously on some of these discussions that you've had with industry leaders, is just never turn down an opportunity to better yourself and take intelligent risks. And I would also say, be decisive. It is one of the most important criteria for me when I'm looking for a teammate. I don't mind mistakes. I don't like paralysis because you're too scared to make a decision. I think you have to celebrate victories with your team, no matter how small, because sometimes that thank you is all the encouragement that someone needs to do that next best thing. Collaboration is something we've talked about, and we've got to always get to yes. It may not be the exact yes that somebody was looking for earlier in a situation where you're talking about a solution, but yes has got to be the ultimate answer, because we are service providers and we have to make sure our customer is happy.
Well, that's outstanding. And I really appreciate you have hosted 2 of our programs at at South Carolina ports, and those have been great. And certainly our conversation today, I think, is it fits along the line with what most of successful people are saying. And I think that one of the things that I run into with young people is they get very uncertain. But part of the reason we have, career advancement and good educational programs out there and a team attitude, I think, is what makes ports very successful. So I'm always very pleased that as I talk to folks that they're consistently using the same techniques to get to where they need to be. So I know you have a lot of good plans on the horizon and stuff like that. We certainly wish you all the very best of luck with all of that. And we also want to thank you very much for your support of our programs, and you're an educational partner, obviously, of the IAMPE, but also look forward to maybe coming back again here in the near future and doing some additional training with your team and stuff like that. So Barbara, thank you very, very much for your time today. Very much appreciated, and all the very best of luck. I know you're giving the rest of the ports a real run for their money, but that's a good thing. You hear people are always talking about, all the great ports in China and all the great ports in Europe, forgetting the fact that we have some great ports here. We're going to see some industry changes, obviously, redeployment of vessels and everything else, but it seems like you have all the right things in place.
Well, thank you very much. And just to leave a couple of more inspirational thoughts with those who might be listening to this, is the best advice that I ever received was learn how to take bad news. Otherwise, people will stop telling you about things before it is too late. And then my favorite inspirational quote is by Nelson Mandela. And he stated, "I never lose. I either win or learn."
Yeah, absolutely. Phenomenal. And we appreciate that very much better than what I used to have in my office, which used to say that, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Well, yeah, no, that's not what we do around here. Jeff, thank you so much for having me on. What a pleasure to see you.
Well, it was a pleasure to see you again, and I look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.